of Earth. Should I have this camera set up already? Yes. Do I? No. 1 second. We're on the final row of trees here, day 15. Very exciting. The last row coming down here. And then we can move on to the lake. This little, just 5 little squares, I think. I got my reference image up here just for inspiration rather than exactly. We got this thing going a little crazy over here. Wild animal. Hey. Hey, what are you doing? All right, let's get to it. Okay. So, and what's fun about this row or little box today is we get to do some of the trees just poking up here. So, you know, you get to see a little bit more of the shape here than some of these down here. These are just sort of extending up into the white snow of the mountain. Okay, so I'm going to start out with my 2H pencil. Just get a little situated and just start building that texture as we have been every day. The trouble thing, let me see. I'm so far over now on the paper, my tripod has a hard time reaching it. All right, let's go for this. Let's go for it. So just build the texture. And as I talked about, a lot of this will get covered up. And up here, there's quite a bit of contrast or darker values here, so I'm not going to be too thorough here with my 2H, because a lot of this up here is in shadow. But I do want a few of these lighter values just sort of popping out. So we're at day 15 of almost every day. I was gone the last few days up in the mountains on a little adventure. Did some drawing, did some recording. That'll take me probably months to finish. Can you show all the picture, please? For sure. Here we go. Here is the full drawing. Thanks for asking to see the whole thing. I always kind of wonder. I don't know when people pop in and off or off and on. So, you know, it's good that people, if you don't know what I'm drawing, just let me know and I'll try to show you. This is Mount Rainier. Hello, Becky. How are you? Thanks for spending time with me. You like it? Well, that's good. Well, the name of the stuff. This is just a pencil drawing. This is just a pencil drawing, and I'm just working on the forest here, and I just layer my values. Yep, pencil. And so I layer my values going from light to dark, and then you know, making sure to leave some of the lighter layer behind each time, and it builds, that's what builds all of this texture here, right? So when you get really close, you can somewhat make it out. And then scattering my parents' ashes at Mount Rainier. Okay. Well, must be a pretty special place. Yeah, this is at the Reflection Lakes area of Mount Rainier. Mom was from Tacoma. I live just south of Tacoma in Olympia. So yeah, I took a few days off, so it's not quite every day. I was in Olympic National Park. You live in Ohio, okay. I'm originally from Minnesota, so a little bit closer to you. But I was recording one of those Drawn to Adventures in Olympic National Park. I did a little 20-mile hike. Well, a long 20-mile hike. And when you're an old geezer like me, you get a little sore when you come back. Hey, what are you doing? Did you see Boof at the beginning?
Yeah, I did.
Bozeman. I've been to Bozeman. Traveling to Yellowstone. Bozeman, I wish I could get to Yellowstone in that area more often. Although, of the naturey things, grizzly bears are one thing that I actually have a pretty good fear of. So yeah, I'm just going pretty quickly with my 2H because, like I said, this is a lot of shadows in these trees up here, and the sun. This is just after sunrise here, so there's not a whole lot of light hitting these trees. They're pretty. Well, it's more like the trees are shading themselves, but just roughing stuff in here. But my main goal is to just do little tiny marks to build those branches, and then we'll build contrast with our other values, and that's going to build all that texture. Do you play Roblox? No. I've heard of that. What is that again? Is that a video game, Roblox? It's a game. No, I don't play Roblox. What made you ask that question? Okay. Okay, well. No, but I'll check it out. I've heard that somewhere before, that term. I can't remember where, though. All right. Yeah, as always, if people are looking for any sort of drawing tutorials, or check out my drawing tutorials if there's one you want me to, more nature or wildlife based, something you want me to work on and help you draw, drop a comment somewhere, either here or on one of my videos, and I'll try to work on that for you. As the summer is kind of ending, I'll be home more often. Well, I'll be inside more often. But when it's summer out, I want to be outside. I don't want to be inside drawing all the time. So I've been a little bit slower on my tutorials as of late. And now I might have to check out Roblox and be playing that, so. Just building these trees here. I switched to my HB pencil, and so we're getting a little bit darker. I'm making sure to pick up my pencil so I don't just cover up all that 2H layer. And one thing I've noticed on these lives, my phone is always more contrasty than it is in real life. There's a lot more subtlety looking at it in person, but the video is super, super contrasty, where I feel like some of these, it's like, looks almost as if it's black or white, but there's a lot of middle tones in there. So at some point, I'll have to get a better camera to do these lives, but not quite there yet on the channel. So like I said, there's a lot of trees in full shadow up here. So I'm being a little looser than usual with these layers because I know a lot of it's going to get covered up when I use my 2B in a second. Like you can see here, I'm going to start carving in these trees, and up here it's kind of almost in silhouette against the mountaintop. With the scale though, it's pretty tedious to build the texture this way at this scale because, you know, I'm just doing, these are 1 by 1 inch squares here, and I'm just doing little dots, and that's how I'm maintaining all this texture. You know, if I were to do it all over again, I might draw a little larger, but I was also taking the framing of it into consideration. This is a 12 by 18 drawing. So it's not too big. It's pretty, you know, it's a good size for the wall. And then with framing, you know, it might be 18 by 24 or something like that. Maybe a little bit larger than that with the frame or with the actual frames, but you know, pretty decent size for the wall. But if I had drawn it a little bigger, obviously I could, I'd be building this texture a little bit larger, and so it wouldn't be so tiring on the old hand and fingers. And of course, I'm only keeping my pencil marks going horizontally. I don't want any vertical marks, unless, on occasion, like right here, little tree trunk sticking up. But I usually do that with my eraser near the end. But with your pencil, always be going horizontal, unless you have you know, some tree growing funny, which does happen from time to time. Okay, take a little rest. I'm gonna switch to the 2B here. Saw a bunch of people just jumped on. So here's what we got. This is Mount Rainier, Reflection Lakes. Big day, we're on our last row of trees. Just starting to build that texture. And I haven't shown this yet, but I'm working off a reference image of the photo I took. And like I've always been saying on these lives, the trees I'm more just kind of doing for inspiration in terms of I don't need to mimic them exact. The mountaintop is where I'm trying to get really exact with things. So, because Mount Rainier is such a well-known mountain, I want people to sort of look at it and see specific parts that they know or people who have climbed it. But with trees, it's more I'm just using it to sort of stay accurate with scale and look and feel, but obviously I'm not going for all the trees to look exactly, because I would never finish. All right, let's go to the 2B pencil here, and this is where you can really start to hone in on the shape of everything. And like I said, some of these trees are just sort of sticking up in silhouette. Because this is the mountain right here, you know, all covered in snow. So I can be a little heavier with my 2B than usual. So you can see I'm just sort of, you can really carve in the shape with these darker shades. Some of these trees, like this tree, is causing shadow, casting shadow on this one. So that's why this one's more in silhouette here. But I still want to get, even on these trees, getting some sun, getting some shadows in there, because where all those trees and branches come into the trunk, it's going to be more shaded. Oh, maybe I did. So you can see right there my shadows carved that tree in a little bit. And then here the shadows just kind of slowly get more and more light to create the bottom of this tree here. Just trying to have a little gradient coming up there. A lot of shadows in this little section, but of course I still want that texture, so you know, your eyes would still pick up little variations in the value, which unfortunately on my phone it's pretty harsh with the contrast, as I was saying, but there's a lot of subtlety in here. This is just the top. This tree continues down here, so I'm just trying to carve that in a little bit. And that kind of causes some shadows, revealing a little shadows, and then that again, a little bit of a gradient coming up to this tree, where it's a little lighter. All these trees are casting shadows on each other. It may have gone a little dark here, but a little too dark with my 2B, but we'll fix that in a second with my little eraser trick. But you can see there's a few trees right here, just sort of very subtly showing. Okay, so the little eraser trick, I mention this all the time. I like this eraser because it is not super good at erasing. And that way I can just lift off the top layer of graphite and I can kind of use it to draw a little bit or enhance my drawing and get textures that are harder to achieve with a pencil. So I sharpen it on sandpaper and get it rough. So again, then it erases with a little bit of randomness, which kind of creates that texture. And I just very softly lift up. I mean, these marks, these little dabs are kind of matching what I did with my pencil. And I can just very subtly pick up a little bit and then clean it off again on my eraser. And it also does a little slight blending or actually maybe more smudging, which again kind of enhances the effect of that texture we're building. But on some of these, I know I went a little dark on it. This is the same type of eraser. This one actually just works a little, I don't know what the difference is between the white and the pink one, but this one seems to be a little bit worse actually. But I know I need to take bigger chunks off here. And then just, the shadows down here kind of slowly dissolve into the tree up here. So that's what I'm going for. Just a little bit of randomness. Not everything necessarily needs to take an exact tree shape. When you look at a forest, all those branches and trees blend together a lot, so we've got a lot of that going on. You know, in this whole drawing, there's a lot of that where, you know, you can see a lot of regular tree shapes, but like some of these squares we worked on last week, where is it? Right in here. You don't see any trees, so it's just all texture building. And that's kind of a lot of that going on in here, but we're just darker in our values, which sometimes can be, I don't know if it's trickier, but your brain, you know, you kind of still, your brain tells you to form those tree shapes and you got to work yourself out of that and know that just having the texture is what you're going for. And just because you can't make sense of it into a tree, that's actually a good thing, because nature doesn't work like that. Nature is random and organic, and sometimes it's just texture building rather than drawing trees. The good thing about this technique, as you can see, is I'm using my eraser quite a bit. You really can't, you know, there's no real messing up. If there's something you don't like, you can relatively easily finesse it. And if you want to see a more succinct tutorial, check out how to draw a forest. I go over it, this whole process. But essentially it's just layering your values, building the texture. So you can see these are just some trees kind of hiding out, and they're kind of partially, there's not a lot of light hitting them. So I'm trying to get really subtle with my values here, going from my darkest to this more kind of darker gray. Just being real subtle with the values. Pretty happy with that. There are a few really small tree trunks showing. You can see them. This is my reference image. So there's a tree trunk and there's a tree trunk. Probably wouldn't normally put those in, but I want to show people if they haven't seen it before. I put them in on occasion, like right here. This one was a little bigger. These are so small, but I know it's an interesting thing to watch and think about. And if you're working at a bigger scale, this can be helpful. So I'm gonna go for it and put them in. So we're gonna aim, let's see where we're going. Where are we going, where are we going? Let's just put one right here and right here. And they're gonna be super subtle. So I get my electric eraser, which I highly recommend having one. And some people sharpen these on sandpaper to a really fine tip. And you can do that, but that wears down really quick. So when it's fresh, this is a fresh refill. I like to just use the side of it. And I'm just gonna make and you gotta be super careful because this is aggressive. I'm just gonna make a tiny line. So 2 tiny lines, and then we go back in, just do a little finessing. These are smaller than I would normally put in, but if you're working at a larger scale and you build your texture and then you go in and add this tree trunk in after, it's a really good way to do it and add some super subtle highlights to it. So there's just a little bit of sunlight hitting. And again, you can see, normally I would do larger ones, like where are some big other examples? So like this one, right? This one is really small. But you can see on my reference image, there's just a couple little trunks in there. Anyways, if you're ever trying to add some tree trunk, build your texture like that, and then go in and try this method. Because again, as you can go back in with your pencil, it's another thing, you know, obviously you don't want to erase a large chunk, but if you're super subtle with it, just work really small and controlled. You can add some nice detail. And if you erase too much, just go back, go through the process of building that texture. You could start all the way. You could start all the way from the beginning with your 2H if you erase way too much, but so that way you have all around the trunk your texture all built up, and it, you know, fits in sort of uniformly. Or your texture is built into the trunk of the tree and it looks natural. But yeah, so we got all these trees poking up into the mountain, a few little subtle ones hiding in the shadows. Here's just kind of shadows fading up into this tree. But I think, let's pop out, you know, it's in line with the rest of the drawing here. Looks like, again, our final row of trees seems to be taking shape. Let me pop this light off, sometimes that's better. All right, day 15, day 16, we'll move on to this square. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days of trees left, which I am excited to be done with the trees. And then we'll do a little bit of the lake here, which is just the beginning of the lake. And this is a little bit of grass. And then we'll move up to the mountaintop, which these are probably going to take me the longest of anything, even though a lot of them look empty. Trying to match it perfectly and build the texture. You like some really soft, subtle shading, where this little valley of snow right there. That stuff is the stuff that takes forever. You can see what I do there is I break my little 1 by 1 inch squares. I actually break them down into quarters just so I can really nail the scale of things and make sure everything's in the right place. And I like these 1 by 1 inch squares because between work and family and taking care of things at home, just sets a daily achievable goal that I can do without trying to do a big chunk and get overwhelmed or bogged down. And it also ensures, like, you know, so we're at about a half hour of just this amount of detail to build that texture. it ensures that I don't rush it, and that way I'm happy with every little section of it, which is important when you're working realistically, not to rush, and it forces me not to do that. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. 6 days of trees left.